This presentation is dashing your way to a healthier heart and weight. The eating plan that we're going to discuss is designed to lower blood pressure, cholesterol, and body weight. What will you learn today? First, we want to know, what do the numbers mean? What raises blood pressure and cholesterol? What steps can you do to lower blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugars, and even weight? All of these can be done by trying the DASH diet. Let's start by talking about what is blood pressure. Blood pressure is the force of blood against the wall of the arteries. Systolic means the pressure while the heart beats. The diastolic pressure is measured as the heart relaxes. Typically, more attention is given to the systolic blood pressure, which is the first number, as a major risk factor for cardiovascular disease for people over the age of 50. In most people, systolic blood pressure rises steadily with age due to the increasing stiffness of large arteries, long-term buildup of plaque, and an increased incidence of cardiac and vascular disease. The abbreviation millimeter per Hg means millimeters of mercury. Mercury was used in the first accurate pressure gauge and is still used in medicine today as the standard unit of measurement. So when we say normal blood pressure is less than 120 millimeters of mercury for systolic and less than 80 for diastolic. So you see the two numbers, 120 over 80. What is high blood pressure or hypertension? A consistent blood pressure of 140 over 90 or higher, and some doctors may even use a lower number of 130 over 80 as the standard. It is best to discuss this with your healthcare provider. High blood pressure or hypertension also has no warning signs or symptoms. Typically, measuring your blood is the only way to know for sure. It increases your chances for heart disease, kidney disease, having a stroke, damage to your brain and your eyes. What causes high blood pressure? There's lots of factors, including genetic factors, being overweight or obese, a high salt intake, narrowing or stiffening of the arteries. This can also increase as you age and increase your blood pressure over time. A lack of exercise, increased stress in your life, or drinking too much alcohol can all increase your blood pressure. So let's look further at some of these causes and go into a little further detail. High blood pressure tends to run in families and is more likely to affect men than women. Your age, your race, these things can also play a role. Most Americans have an underlying cause that cannot be determined. This type of blood pressure is usually called primary or essential hypertension. The essential hypertension is also greatly influenced by diet and lifestyle and develops gradually. So the link between salt or sodium, as you may have heard, is high blood pressure is especially compelling, which is why we really want to talk more about this in the DASH diet, to talk about ways that you can cut back on salt and sodium in your diet. The majority of all people with high blood pressure are salt sensitive, which simply means that anything more than your minimal bodily need for salt is too much for you and could increase your blood pressure. Other factors that have been associated with essential hypertension include obesity, diabetes, stress, insufficient intake of potassium, calcium, magnesium, and a lot of times that is because we cut back on eating our fruits and vegetables, a lack of activity, and chronic alcohol consumption, which I mentioned earlier. So all of these reasons are a good reason to find out what your numbers are from your doctor, how your diet and your cholesterol numbers work together. So what do you know about them, and what do you need to know about them? How many of you have had cholesterol tested this year? Do you know what your numbers are? And when you get your numbers back from your blood test, was the total number less than 200? Why should we discuss cholesterol as a part of being heart healthy? Because your cholesterol levels affect your heart health just like blood pressure does. Choosing the right foods can also make a difference, which is why we're going to talk more about what the DASH diet and eating plan is. The foods that you eat, along with your lifestyle and genetics, definitely affect your cholesterol levels. So you can see that the foods you eat affect your cholesterol levels, while your cholesterol levels in turn affect your overall heart health. So when we're talking about cholesterol and your heart attack risk, it's good to know where these things fit together. So if you have a history of smoking, you have high blood cholesterol or high blood pressure, and low HDL cholesterol, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in a minute, what that means. All of these increase your risk of a heart attack and stroke for a 10-year span. So what is total cholesterol? The sum of different types of cholesterol in your blood is what the total means. The higher your total cholesterol, the greater your risk for heart disease, which is why when they run the tests, they measure all of these. So when you get your results, your doctor may go through some of these with you and be sure that you understand what they mean. So let's look a little more at those numbers. What do the cholesterol numbers mean? So a desirable cholesterol level is anywhere from 25 to 199, so essentially less than 200. That's also made up of triglycerides, which you want to be less than 150, HDLs greater than 40, that's the one number that you want to be higher, and then LDLs less than 100. And then now we're going to go into a little more detail. What do those specific blood readings mean? The HDL, or the low density lipoprotein, these are the main sources of blockages in your arteries. So you want to think LDL, lousy. That's the bad cholesterol, the one that clogs your arteries the most. So lowering your LDL is the main goal of treatment when you have high cholesterol. So in general, the higher your low density lipoprotein level, the greater your chance of developing heart disease. So you want to take steps to really improve your lifestyle if your LDL levels are too high, because this means you're really putting your heart at risk. Now the HDL cholesterol. So you want to think H for helpful. This is the good cholesterol. This is the one that you want to be higher. So it stands for high density lipoprotein, the H, D, and the L, and your goal is to have it greater than 40. Higher levels of HDL seem to be more protective against coronary artery disease, so you can help by getting daily exercise and making healthy lifestyle changes. This will help raise your HDL levels. Now, what is the other fat? The triglycerides. Triglycerides are a type of fat or lipid, which is another word for fat, found in your blood as well. When you eat, your body converts any calories that it cannot use right away into triglycerides. High triglyceride levels may also be associated with a higher risk for heart disease and stroke. Why do these matter so much? So the most common causes of high triglycerides are excess weight and poorly controlled blood sugars, eating too many foods and drinks that are high in sugar, alcohol, which means exceeding your 2 drinks per day for men or 1 drink per day for women. And when your triglycerides are more than 200 and your HDLs are below 40, and remember the HDLs are the good cholesterol, the risk of your heart disease increases. They can be a part also of a metabolic syndrome, which also includes too much fat around your waistline, having high blood pressure, your high blood sugar levels or glucose, and higher cholesterol levels overall. So all of those numbers work together, and we want to try to get those numbers down as much as possible. And that's what we're going to talk about, is how to do that. So the more risk factors you have, the higher your risk of heart disease and stroke. This includes things like cigarette smoking, high blood pressure, which is another word that we use, hypertension, increased cholesterol levels, which also another word for that is hyperlipidemia, you may have heard, family history of heart disease, your age, because heart disease and stroke can happen at any time, but the risk increase as you age. If you have diabetes, or if you're following an unhealthy diet and not getting enough exercise. Let's talk about what a DASH diet is and how can it help. DASH stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. And the DASH diet was developed by the National Institute of Health and can improve your overall health in general. The importance of following the DASH plan. So following the DASH diet at 1500 milligrams of sodium may prevent the development of high blood pressure and the increase in systolic blood pressure that typically occurs as you age. It can also help do more than lower blood pressure though. It's also effective for weight loss, preventing and managing diabetes and cholesterol levels. So according to the American Heart Association, researchers were very excited to have very solid evidence of this link between what you eat and your overall health. So the recommendations: increasing your fruit and vegetables, especially legumes and beans, increasing your fiber intake, decreasing your overall fat consumption, and especially the bad fats or the saturated fats, the ones that clog your arteries the most. And we're going to go into greater detail here. So what does the DASH eating plan look like, for example? Food groups, which include like your grains, vegetables, fruits, low-fat or non-dairy products, lean meats, fish and poultry primarily, nuts, seeds, dried beans, your fats and oils, and sweets. So this is giving you an example of how many servings from each food group if you were following a typical 2,000 calorie a day diet or meal plan. So again, the word diet in this sense only means what you're eating, not diet in the sense of something bad or something that is negative. It's very positive. So trying to get in all of the healthy food groups and choosing leaner cuts of meats, lower fat dairy products, things that are also going to be lower in sodium. So can you lose weight? Definitely you can lose weight if you're consuming less calories than you are currently. That causes weight loss. So if you were typically following a 2,500 calorie a day intake or a 2,000 calorie intake, and now you're trying to cut back and you're averaging around 1,600 calories a day, it would look more like these servings, whereas your grains make up the base of the meal. If you have diabetes and you're trying to cut back on overall carbohydrates, here you could decrease the grain servings at each meal a little bit and increase the non-starchy vegetable servings to kind of offset the extra carbohydrates here. Also with fruits, the same thing. If you have higher triglycerides, then you may only want to have 3 servings of fruit instead of 4. The dairy needs to be a lower fat, lower sodium option, and then trying to choose mostly chicken and fish over other types of meat. When you're choosing nuts, seeds, and beans 3 times a week, you're wanting to make sure they're unsalted and not using any unhealthy fat to cook those or prepare those in any way. When you're adding fat servings to your meals, you're wanting them to be more unsaturated, healthy type of oils, which we'll talk a little bit more about in just a minute. And sweets, meaning prepared, packaged dessert type foods, unless you're making them fresh yourself, you really want to limit the intake of those saturated fats that are coming in those extra calories. So lowering your sodium intake is key here. So checking out food labels and reading the sodium content, which really means limiting processed foods in general. So frozen meals, frozen dinners, canned soups, boxed cereals, prepared breads, deli meats and cheeses, and then limiting fast food type of foods that sodium has already been added to, where you have no control over how much salt you can actually add yourself. And then in your own cooking at home, you want to limit how much salt you're adding to your meals. And you can use other seasonings like Mrs. Dash, or looking for fresh herbs and spices that do not add salt. If you're doing a frozen meal as a quick dinner, maybe you're running to appointments for lunch and you don't have time to go out and get anything, and you didn't prepare anything fresh from the night before, maybe you want to do a quick frozen meal. So something that you can look on the label and determine, is it lower in sodium than some of these other higher sodium ones. For example, some of the meals that you might see by Healthy Choice, for example, those would have less sodium per serving than some of your other typical frozen dinners. And those are the things you want to look at and compare. But just know that anything that comes in a package or processed could potentially have more sodium. One exception to that would be if you bought frozen fruit or frozen vegetables. If you look on the label on the back, if they were just prepared as they are and frozen and they didn't add anything to it, the only ingredients you would see in the ingredients would be the fruit or the vegetable. No salt or sodium added. Same thing for canned. You could look at the canned, make sure it doesn't have added sugar, syrup, or salt or sodium. And those would be in a package, but they would be healthier to buy than the other versions that do have a lot of added salt or sodium. For example, start by understanding how sodium is in some of the foods that we eat in America that are typically prepared ahead of time, and they add more salt or sodium, not only for flavor because people like the taste of it, but also to keep it longer, give it more shelf life. And things might be like tomato juice, 820 milligrams per serving, but you may find a lower sodium serving that's a third of that amount, which would be okay. Cheese, same thing. If a typical serving is 600 milligrams of sodium per serving, you want to look for a lower sodium cheese option. Same thing where you're doing processed hams or pork products, breads, trying to limit snack type foods that have been prepared in general anyway, like chips and cereals and pizza type foods. But if you're having that as a part of your day, for example, you wanted to have something to crunch or do a healthy salsa with vegetables and you want a way to dip it, looking at a prepared, healthier chip option that's made with whole grains and less sodium. And seeing why fresh is always better. When you compare those numbers for something that may have been 500, 600, 700 milligrams of sodium per serving to fresh vegetables, which are less than 50, and that comes from the earth, the way they were grown, not anything that was added. Same thing when you're looking at a baked potato, for example. That is naturally what was in the potato, but nothing to be alarmed about. You just want to control adding extra salt to it. Use more pepper or things like that to season it. Chives, things that are fresh, not processed. When you're having something like oatmeal, you want to buy you can do the quick, but not the instant. When you see the word instant, that typically means they've added a lot of sodium to it. Spaghetti sauce, same thing. You can find lower sodium versions or make it yourself where you control how much seasoning is added. So DASH eating equals overall balanced eating and better overall health. So looking further at how the DASH can increase your overall nutrition as well as lowering some health issues. So reducing overall sodium intake, it also provides lots of potassium, magnesium, calcium, and fiber-rich foods that also are heart and brain protective. Good sources of potassium, for example, are fruits, especially bananas, oranges, prunes, vegetables, especially potatoes, broccoli, peas, spinach, dried beans, nuts, whole grains. Now, if your doctor has told you to limit potassium for some reason, then you might want to talk to your doctor or your health coach or dietitian to find out what foods you can add into your diet or eat more of without going over your potassium level. Same thing with magnesium. These are good sources, which include nuts and seeds, seafood. Obviously, you want to steam, bake, broil, or grill those items. Legumes, dark green leafy vegetables, whole grain breads and cereals. And occasionally, if you want a sweet treat that has less sugar, dark chocolate is a good source of magnesium. You're just wanting to really limit the portion sizes there. So DASH also provides lots of calcium. And not only do you need this for good blood pressure, it's protective in lots of other ways as well. It helps reduce your risk of osteoporosis and keeping your bones strong. So lots of good reasons to have foods like non-fat dairy or lower fat dairy options, especially things that do not have a lot of added sodium, dried beans, a low-fat, sugar-free pudding if you're wanting a healthier snack option. Some of your leafy greens like turnip greens and collard greens are a little bit higher in calcium. Then you have fish like salmon, sardines with the bones in them that are really small and soft that have been crushed up to add more calcium. Fortified juices, cereals, and soy milk are also good options. Just remember, if you have higher blood sugars, you want to make sure that you're limiting the portion sizes here because of the overall carbohydrates. Broccoli, almonds, bok choy, tofu are another good calcium sources. So how can you increase your fruits and vegetables every day? Because it seems to be one of the things that most of us fall short on. So planning a minimum of 3 meals a day can help get those fruits and vegetables in there. Then you can also include at least 1 serving of fruit at each meal, sort of like a sweet treat. Just making sure that you're sticking with your portion sizes. Having 2 vegetables at lunch and 2 to 3 at dinner as well, especially those non-starchy vegetables that have the least amount of carbohydrate and more fiber. They're also lower in calories. Plan healthy snacks using fruit and vegetables instead of some of your pre-packaged prepared foods. So serving sliced fruit or vegetables with a low-fat hummus or yogurt can also give you some added protein. Add some sunflower seeds and small servings of nuts to dried fruits to no more than a half a cup serving if that fits into your daily allowance as well. Eating more legumes, beans, and seeds sort of gives you a picture here of an idea of how you can fit those things into a day by trying some low sodium options of soups, beans for maybe a lunch, replacing meat in casseroles, pasta dishes, and stir fries with beans. Snacking on unsalted nuts, just be aware of the serving sizes so you don't increase the calories that you're taking in as well, especially if you're watching the overall fat intake. Nuts are especially healthy, but they can also rack up a lot of calories, so just being mindful of your portion sizes. Also sprinkling seeds on yogurt, cereal, and salad. Other good seed options are like flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds that give you a good serving of protein and also a good serving of a healthy fat. Dash eating also means reducing your overall fat intake. So 2 to 3 servings of healthier fats. And what does that look like? 1 to 2 teaspoons is a serving. So if you're using a soft margarine that is made primarily from a vegetable oil source, very small servings of butter, mayonnaise, oils, essentially made from olive, avocado, and canola are some of your healthier options. By also limiting sweets and trans fats, the American Heart Association recommends limiting the amount of trans fats you eat to less than 1% of your total calories. So, for example, if you're following the 2,000 calories a day, then you would have no more than 20 calories from trans fats. Now, a lot of companies have worked really hard to decrease the amount of trans fat in products already, but still being mindful to look for these things on labels. So less than 2 grams of trans fats a day would be a good healthy goal. And what are trans fats? So basically they are formed when hydrogen is added to a vegetable oil during processing, called hydrogenation. You may see on labels words like hydrogenation, partially hydrogenated. Those are all the words that mean more trans fats or saturated fats in those foods. So the way to reduce that in your diet is by limiting the amount of pre-packaged foods that you buy. So instead of cookies from a box, you would make your cookies at home from scratch using a healthy oil instead of butter or lard, and using oats and seeds to add more fiber and healthy fat servings. Crackers made with hydrogenated oils you would want to consume less or buy less of, but buying the baked crackers that tell you in the ingredients they're using a healthy oil and low sodium. Little Debbie cakes, for example, have a higher source of trans fats and saturated fats, but you could simply switch to maybe a baked angel food cake serving. You still have to watch the carbohydrate intake, so be mindful of your portions. If you're frying meats, a lot of times they will have more saturated and could also include trans fats, especially if you're buying them prepared or bought through a fast food meal. But using baked, broiled, or grilled would certainly be less risky and using healthier fat options. Reducing your intake of marbled steaks and using something like grilled chicken breast instead. So here's something else you can do. If you often eat more calories than you burn off, the fats in your blood may start to increase, along with your blood sugar and, guess what, abdominal fat. That's right, our stomach area tends to hold more unhealthy fat than the rest of our body. So following the DASH dietary plan or healthier eating can help you. It helps you by eating more fiber from your vegetables and fruits, eating more fish and lean proteins, cooking with healthier fats like olive and canola oils, decreasing your overall alcohol consumption, and thereby helping you to lose weight as well. So what else do you need to do? First, never change your diet, activity level, or stop taking medications without your doctor's approval. If you are on medications for cholesterol, diabetes, or hypertension, please continue taking them as directed by your doctor, and definitely check in often to see if those dosages are still correct for you. Talk to your health coach and dietitian to get help customizing your dietary needs, especially if you're trying to follow these DASH tips and you want to make sure they're meeting your specific needs. Start with daily activity and shoot for at least 30 minutes. You may need to start slow and go at your own pace. You want to stop smoking, and you may need help by getting enrolled in one of our Quit Smart smoking cessation programs. Behavior changes can be tough, so remember, you do not have to do this alone. HealthTeam Advantage's care management team will be right here with you. So knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do. This is a wonderful quote that I will leave you with today. Have a great day, and reach out to your care management team if you have questions or wish to have more information about our Living Plus programming.